Hey people, we made it to the early modern era, and the big theme for today is empires are expanding by using technology that was developed in the previous era. So for example, that Chinese gunpowder gets taken by the Mongols, turned into cannons, and now in this era we have gunpowder empires. This can be the Manchu or the Qing in China, the Mughals in India, the Safavid in Persia, and the Ottomans in the rest of the Middle East. Hey look, they're all united by that Silk Road trade. Thanks Mongols, what a coincidence. Obviously they're gonna have conflict, not just over land, but also over religion. We have Sunni versus Shia, for example. Another change that's helping empires expand is the rise of more professional militaries. So Japan gets unified under the Tokugawa shogunate, and the shogun creates an army of salaried samurai. We also have the Ottomans using a system called devshirme to take conquered people and turn them into a janissary military class. Then we also have Russia, who's rising up and starting to use their Cossack peasants as like a peasant warrior army. Next up is the rise of maritime empires. Alright, so we talked about empires expanding using technology from 1450 to 1750. But obviously the biggest change that's happening this time period is the rise of maritime empires. And so all of that technology, like the compass and long-distance ships and navigation technology from the post-classical era, finally makes its way to Europe, thanks Mongols, and they start to use that to develop sea-based empires. It's also partly because those gunpowder empires are like in the way, making it hard for land-based travel to Asia. Portugal goes first and starts sending out ships along the coast of Africa, and they're like, oh, this is scary, and they turn around. Then finally, they make it all the way around the southern tip of Africa and then eventually to India, and they're going to create what's called a trading post empire. This means they don't actually control a ton of land, but they control and have influence in a lot of, you guessed it, trading posts. Spain obviously goes the other way. We know Columbus, and they create a massive land-based empire, but in the New World. And so I want us to notice what is new is that you have empires that are spanning multiple oceans where the mother country is in one continent and then their colonies are in another continent. That seems obvious to us now, but it is a really new thing. And so in the next video, we need to talk about how do states administer those massive empires. As we see the rise of larger gunpowder and maritime empires, we have to wonder how are they legitimizing and consolidating their power. So there's still religious justifications to rule. China continues to have the mandate of heaven. The Aztec and the Inca use sacrifice. West African kings adopt Islam, and European monarchs assert the divine right to rule. But what is changing is that those leaders are also finding ways to take power from traditional like nobility and give it instead to bureaucratic elites who they choose and who then serve them. The Ottomans and the Mughals do this with tax collection, like in tax farming or zamindars. England and France appoint justices of the peace or intendants to carry out the king's justice. And we see an explosion of art and monumental architecture, but less glorifying the state religion, although you do see that with like the Inca Sun Temple, and more to glorify the state and its leaders. The Qing commissioned imperial portraits, the Mughal emperor commissions mausolea like the Taj Mahal, which was for Shah Jahan's favorite wife, and of course Louis XIV builds Versailles. Next up, religious chaos. AP World, so in the era of gunpowder and maritime empires, belief systems are fracturing, spreading, and combining. It's all happening. In addition to the Sunni-Shia conflicts of the Middle East, you also have the Protestant Reformation and then the ensuing counter-reformation from the Catholic Church. That's going to lead to centuries of religious wars in Europe, and it motivates Catholic missionaries to spread out around the world to try to gain new followers as they lose them in Europe. We also have states just outright excluding religious minorities. For example, the new Tokugawa shogunate bans Christianity. You have Jews expelled from most European kingdoms. A lot of them find safe haven in the Ottoman Empire. And obviously there's forced conversion in the New World, especially through tools like the Spanish Inquisition. But there's also some really interesting forms of cultural mixing that are occurring as a result of this conquest. A lot of people in the Americas incorporate indigenous elements of their religion into Catholicism. For example, La Virgen de Guadalupe in Mexico is really just kind of a reimagining of Tonantzin, the Mother Earth goddess. West African traditions mix throughout the Caribbean to create various forms of voodoo. And for many Black enslaved communities, Christianity is going to be a really important unifier, especially as they see themselves in the plight of the Jewish people who were forced out of their homeland and then enslaved.